Hello everyone, it's Scott, and we're back with the official start of Aetherdrift spoiler season, and we're going to talk about the Mythic rares from day one in this video, and we'll also be looking at the rares in a separate video and the uncommons and commons in a separate video, simply because there are so many cards today that I think this is the most efficient way for us to get through them and spend an appropriate amount of time with each card. So before we do the previews for today, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Aetherdrift preview season and beyond. So let's dive into today's Mythic Rares. So first we've got Chandra Sparkhunter for 3 and a red mana. You get a legendary Planeswalker Chandra with 4 loyalty. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control. Until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. So very powerful static ability on Chandra. So clearly this card was meant to be part of an artifact creature deck, or really a vehicle deck where you could cast vehicles after playing Chandra and immediately make those artifact creatures and give them haste to let the big and powerful vehicles from the set really shine. So that's where I see this seeing standard play. Now, Chandra has obviously regular Planeswalker abilities beyond the static. So for +2, you may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, you get to draw a card. So you can do that without actually sacrificing an artifact or discarding a card to get the +2, but you wouldn't get the card. Nice ability, that rummage ability that we see a lot of times on Planeswalkers. For 0 loyalty, you get to create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1. Again, immediately you cast Chandra, and on that turn, you use the 0 ability, and now you've got a 3/2 vehicle token that immediately gets haste and becomes an artifact creature because of the static ability. And if you can get to 7 loyalty, her -7, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control enters the battlefield, this emblem deals 3 damage to any target. So overall, I like Chandra. I think in a dedicated vehicle deck, this is the right spot for her. Now, is that going to be good enough to see a lot of standard play? Only time is going to tell that one. Next, we've got the Aether Spark for 4 mana. You get a legendary artifact Planeswalker equipment with 4 loyalty. And as long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark cannot be attacked and has whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. So a nice way to increase the loyalty of the Aether Spark pretty quickly. You put it on a medium-sized creature and it just starts hitting your opponent. And once you get to a higher level of loyalty, we've got some nice abilities on the Aether Spark. So it's +1 ability attached to the Aether Spark to up to 1 target creature you control, and you get to put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And obviously you can do that multiple times. So her +1 ability really is, hey, give something a +1/+1 counter. And if you want to change the creature that the Aether Spark is on, you can do that as well. For -5, you can draw 2 cards, and for -10, you get to add 10 mana of any one color. So I'm less interested in the -10 ability there. Probably we're not going to see that one very often, but I think there will be times when you do use the -5 ability after you have attached the Aether Spark to a creature to draw those cards. And because of that, I think this is potentially got a home in standard somewhere, and it's just going to be kind of figuring out what deck this belongs in. Next, we've got Hazoret Godseeker for 1 and a red mana. You get a legendary creature, that's a god. It's a 5/3 with indestructible and haste, and it has the ability of start your engines. So this new mechanic is if you have no speed, it starts at 1, increases once each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Max speed is 4. So once you get to 4, that's when you get to the max speed abilities. In this case for Hazoret, that means Hazoret can attack and block. Okay, when it has max speed, otherwise it cannot. So it's kind of a downside to Hazoret, But the upside of Hazoret is you play this and you can crew any of your vehicles immediately. So I think this fits well into that style of deck. And then also you can pay 1 mana and tap Hazoret, and target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. So a way of making sure your max speed ability is increased by 1 each turn by allowing one of your creatures to go through unmolested by your opponent. And because of that, I think Hazoret has a place in Standard. I like it in the vehicle deck because I think it's a really good card for crewing those vehicles. But I think we'll have to see if it has more general red playability given where red is currently in Standard. Next, we've got our 2 of our Gear Hulks for the day. And the first one is Briarwood Gear Hulk for 2 red and 2 green mana. You get an artifact creature. That's a construct. It's 7/7 with Vigilance and Menace. And when this creature enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. Damage can't be prevented this turn. So really powerful enter the battlefield trigger there, giving all of your creatures +2/+2, Vigilance and Menace, which I think, in the mid game when you be playing this, I think that's a really powerful ability. The problem with Briarwood Gear Hulk is that it's 6 mana. We're not seeing a lot of 6 mana cards seeing Standard play right now, unless there's something that is a reanimation target, and I don't know if Briarwood Gear Hulk is that kind of card for us, but it potentially could be in the right build. Next, we've got Oil Deep Gear Hulk for 2 blue and 2 black mana. You get an artifact creature. That's a construct. It's a 4/4. It has lifelink and a ward of 1. And when this creature enters the battlefield, look at target player's hand. You may choose a card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. So this is an interesting ability on Oil Deep Gear Hulk because you could target yourself with that ability as well as your opponent. So I think it's kind of where you are in the game that's going to determine whether you're going to target yourself to get that card draw or you'll be targeting your opponent. But I think this is a good card. I don't exactly know where it fits right now, but I think it will see some Standard play. And even Briarwood Gear Hulk, I think, is going to see some Standard play in the right deck. Next, we've got Loot the Pathfinder for 2, a green, a blue, and a red mana. You get a legendary creature. That's a Beast Noble and is a 2/4 with double strike, vigilance, and haste. And he has the new mechanic of exhaust. So each exhaust ability can be activated once. So for Loot, that means you can pay a green mana and add 3 mana of any one color. You can play a blue mana to draw 3 cards. You can pay a red mana and Loot deals 3 damage to any target. So I think, Loot overall on the surface is a good Magic card. And we've seen, Magic cards that were Loots in the past that are pretty good cards. But the problem is, where does it fit? And we really don't have a deck in these colors currently in Standard. And because of that, I think Loot right now isn't going to be played in a lot. But the abilities on Loot, I think, are strong enough to see play. The question is, what kind of deck wants it? Next, we've got our first vehicle of the day, and that's Thunderous Velocipede for 1 and 2 green mana. You get an artifact vehicle. That's a 5/5 with trample. Each other vehicle and creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it, and its crew is 3. So I think this is by far the best vehicle of the day. That ability to give your creatures and your vehicles +1/+1 counters when they enter the battlefield is a strong ability in Standard. And the fact that this is an artifact and it has to be crewed to be a creature, I think is really important because we're not seeing a ton of artifact removal currently in standard decks. So because of that, I think this, at least early in Aetherdrift's standard season, I think this is going to be a card that has a lot of reach to it, because you're going to be able to consistently cast this probably on turn 3 and then on turn 4, and after that you're going to be giving all the creatures that you have come into play a +1/+1 counter, or multiple +1/+1 counters if their mana value is greater than 4. Next, we've got the Last Ride. For 1 black mana, you get a 13/13 legendary artifact vehicle, and the Last Ride gets -X/-X, where X is your life total. That's really the downside of the Last Ride. So you can play it on turn 1, get an artifact in play, but you won't be able to use it early in the game, even though its crew ability is only 2. And the reason for that is, if you play it and you have 13 or more life, it just dies. So I think this is going to go into a specific kind of deck that is going to really be looking for ways to lose some life along the way, and then late in the game you play this and it's a 13/13 creature, or really not a 13/13 creature, but you're getting it to be a 5/5, a 6/6 or better in that late game, and it's something that certainly can block most things your opponent would be attacking with. And you also have the added ability of paying 2 and a black and 2 life, and you get to draw a card. So it's a high cost on that one, but I think in some decks that don't have a lot of card draw that might want this for the late game, I think that's going to be good enough to see some standard play. And our last Mythic Rare of the day is Valor's Flagship. For 4 and 3 white mana, you get a 7/7 legendary artifact vehicle. It has flying, first strike, and lifelink. Its crew ability costs 3, and it also has cycling for X2 and a white mana. And you get to discard a card and then draw a card. And when you cycle this card, you get to create X/1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens. With this token saddles mounts and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So that means it's going to crew anything that has a requirement of 3 power or greater. That's going to be something that those tokens can indeed go ahead and crew. So I think, again, the question is, where does this fit? I think you're playing it probably for the cycling ability, rather than playing it as a threat. Certainly being able to crew it for 3 is a relatively low cost, but getting it onto the battlefield is going to be the problem. It's 7 mana, and that really is a limiting factor on this. So I don't think that we'll see more than a couple copies of this in any deck that we see going forward. But I think where this is going to shine is in Commander, where you already have an artifact vehicle deck that's in the EDH format, and because of that, I think this is a card that very nicely fits into a format like that. All right, those are our Mythic Rares from day 1 of Aetherdrift spoilers. Tell me what you think in the comments. Did I miss something? And remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Aetherdrift spoiler season and beyond. And I'll be back with a video for our rares from the day, and also one for our commons and uncommons. Thanks. I'll see you in the next one.